Are you playing to win or just running out the clock? In sports, the game clock drives every decision. It creates urgency, sharpens focus, and pushes players to perform their best. So what if you treated your life with that same sense of urgency? I've created an exercise to help you do just that. It's called Your Game Clock. Download Your Game Clock today at bill-burke.net/clock. It's free, it's simple, yet transformative, and it could be the first step towards achieving peak performance in the areas of your life that matter the most. Remember, life isn't a practice run. Every second counts, and your time is now. I am thrilled to welcome my new friend to the show. He's got a very diverse background in the corporate world. He was a competitive athlete at a high level, which I'm excited to ask him about, and as well as the Chief Marketing Officer now at SkyGen. Don Polite, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to get into your athletic career, of course, because I know that's a big part of your background. You competed at a high level in college. But before I do that, Don, and as I like to do with all my guests, because I think it's just so critical to their overall story and how they arrived to be sitting in this conversation that we're having right now. Everybody's from a different part of the country. Everybody's from a different background. They have a different environment, different families set up. So I would just like you to start by giving our audience a little bit of background, where you're from, how it shaped you, how it shaped who you are today, and maybe one or two takeaways or lessons that really you learned when you were a kid and have stuck with you to this point.
So that's a great question, Bill. I have, I guess, a diverse background in the sense that I really grew up in the Northeast in Connecticut, but I was born down in Augusta, Georgia, of all things, a stone's throw from Augusta National.
Yeah.
And my parents are from Georgia and South Carolina originally. And we actually lived for a year or two across the state line in South Carolina and North Augusta. But very quickly, we moved up to the Northeast, and it was due to my dad's career. He was an executive, and as he ascended to the leadership ranks, we moved very quickly up to the Northeast, actually settled in northern New Jersey. And that was significant from a sports perspective because my older brother, Eddie, who's 4 years older than me, is like you, a former Big Ten football player and played at a powerhouse Catholic school in northern New Jersey called DePaul High School in Wayne, New Jersey. And that afforded
Oh,
him the
yeah.
opportunity to go through the ranks there and ultimately ended up at Iowa. But then my father's company moved their corporate headquarters to Fairfield County, Connecticut. So I actually went to high school in small and so grew up there. So really a Northeast family with Southern roots, if you will. A small family, a loving family, terrific parents. And I think that the thing that I take away from there, even as my brother and I were ascending to heights in sports, my dad grew up in the South, ultimately became an executive. And at that time, in the 70s, if you will, he was one of few in terms of a minority in executive roles, and he even ascended to a CEO role for a bottling and packaging company. And in doing so, he really taught us the importance of perseverance and hard work. And he also taught us a lot about confidence because he said, listen, you're going to end up in situations where you may be a minority in the room like myself, and really instilled confidence that you deserve a seat at any table. And I think that was super important to us. But the other part was, again, is we were doing great things athletically. He stressed the importance of academics, and you can only play this game for so long. And we've taken that to heart, both my brother and I, after our playing days.
The word that comes to mind when you tell that story is well-rounded. Your background is a little north, a little south, a little academic, a little athletic. I love it. And that no doubt has influenced you to a large degree and really shaped where you're at now, which we're going to talk a little bit about as well. So I want to spend a little bit of time on that athletic part because you and I share that background. We were both college athletes along with your brother as well. You didn't play football. You played another major sport, another revenue sport, as it's called, in collegiate athletics and basketball. And you did that again at a very, some might say, academic institution, which also has great athletic programs as well. Their football team has won the Big Ten title in recent years multiple times, I know. And it's just one of the best institutions that we have in the entire country in shaping well-rounded young people. So tell me about how you actually went from high school in the Northeast and ended up in the Midwest at Northwestern.
I appreciate you saying that about Northwestern. And the one thing I didn't mention in those travels, we had a pit stop in the Midwest
Okay.
in Chicago. So my dad ended up in a sort of a general manager role before he ended up in the sort of corporate office in the Northeast. So we spent, oh gosh, 3 or 4 years, and I lived in
Mhm.
Naperville,
Yep.
Illinois, home of Candace Parker and really so many other great athletes who've come through and done great things in the Big Ten and other institutions. Frank Kaminsky went to high school, a great Wisconsin Badger in actually the neighboring town, Lisle, Illinois. But nonetheless, so we spent 4 years. So we had a little Midwest in us, and we had exposure to all those powerhouse Big Ten schools. So when it came time for recruitment, that's one of the reasons my brother was attracted to Iowa, and that was the beginning of the Hayden Fry era at that time. So
Sure.
that was one thing. And then for me, I grew up really idolizing my brother, wanted to be a football player. Actually, was playing football as a high school freshman and then sophomore. And going into my sophomore year, I was slotted to be a starting safety and wide receiver for the varsity, and then broke my leg in a non-contact play in training camp. And I was a stick figure back then. I'm about 6'6", and I was really thin back then, and didn't really have the sort of the body type, if you will, to withstand football. And I think I took to heart after that injury that maybe it wasn't my sport after all, and really rehabbed quickly that fall, that sophomore year, to get back out in the court so I could play basketball, which I did. And we had a terrific season that year. And it became clear to all of us that maybe basketball is where I should spend my time and focus. So unfortunately, I gave up football, but I put all my energy into basketball, and ultimately it led to a scholarship offer from a handful of schools, and Northwestern was on the list. And again, that having that sort of prepare for all of your life and the importance of academics and what are you going to do beyond basketball was in my mind as I was considering the schools. And I think all of them offered a great education, but I just felt the combination that Northwestern afforded me and the opportunities beyond my playing days were too much to pass up. So I jumped in and did my undergrad at Northwestern. Unfortunately, we didn't win a lot of games. I played with some really good players, but we played in the very powerful era of the Big Ten. My freshman year, Indiana won the national title with Keith Smart and Steve Alford and Dean Garrett and Daryl Thomas and all those guys. I think that was Bobby Knight's last national championship. And then my junior year, Michigan won it with Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson and Terry Mills and all of those guys. So a really powerful time in the Big Ten. And I thought we had a decent team and we were going to finally crack through. We didn't do it. I'm so proud of the university and the basketball team and what they've been able to do in recent years. But I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. Playing against great players and big gyms and on TV, and then that combination of that, and then again the academics, it was definitely worth the investment in Northwestern.
Yeah, I love that story, and thanks for sharing that. There's no doubt about it. It's one of the best colleges or universities in the country. Talk to me a little bit about your experience on the court, because I know the education that you got in the classroom, but what about the education that came on the hardwood during your time as a basketball player? Because you and I both are huge sports advocates, an advocate for athletes as well. And I just love the lessons that those sports teach us. I say this all the time with apologies to my professors at Michigan State University. Most of my education came on the gridiron, on the practice field, and what I learned from football. So, what about you? What are some of the big takeaways that you learned during your time then that maybe you didn't understand or hadn't learned before you showed up to campus? And then, are there any that you still carry with you today?
Yeah. I wanted to add to my last statements before I answer that great question, Bill. I listed all the teams that won national championships, and I don't want to waste everyone's time. I could go through a laundry list of legendary names. I do know this. I counted during my 4 years of playing. I must have played against about 65 to 70 guys that ended up in the NBA. Most of that from the
Wow.
Big Ten. We played against Duke non-conference and some other great ones, but majority of that list included Big Ten players. And oh, by the way, there were some legendary Michigan State guys. So Steve Smith is one of the greatest players there ever had the chance to. I can't say guard because I didn't guard him too successfully, but play against Sean Respert, Matt Stegenga. I can go on and on about some of the great Michigan State players. And then obviously I had the honor of competing at the very front end of the Tom Izzo era as well, if you will. So just wanted to drop that in there about Michigan State.
No, I can sympathize with you because I played in the Big Ten at a time where we had to play against guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees. It wasn't a
Yeah,
down year for the Big Ten. So even though
yeah,
we were a really good team, the competition was just insane. So I can sympathize with you.
Yeah, but I had to get that Michigan State call out for you.
Yes.
But to answer your question, all the things that probably are pretty obvious around dedication, perseverance, hard work, collaboration, all of those things, teamwork, right? Those are the skills that you learn. Preparation is so key. You come in from high school, and I saw a quote recently from someone, and I shared it with my youngest son, who's now getting ready to go play college basketball next year. And it was something like this, which is think about the hardest day you had as a high school athlete and how tired you were and how draining it was. And he said, guess what? When you get to college, your hardest day in high school as an athlete pales in comparison to an average day as a college athlete. And it's not only about what happens on the court on game day, it's about the lead up, preseason conditioning, practice during the week. And oh, by the way, add in film work, study, the weight room, and add in your schoolwork and all of that, and trying to balance that while traveling. Okay. So I think just preparation is key, discipline is key, time management is key, and perseverance, because you're going to have ups and downs through all of that. And then in our case, we didn't win a lot of games, right? And it's very public in terms of how people take that in and what they say
Yeah.
about you as a team. And you played at a winning organization, and you're the quarterback, and every move you make gets scrutinized, right? So add that into it, into the mix as well. So how do you have the mental toughness, the perseverance, the maturity to navigate all of those elements? So that's why preparation, time management, and discipline are so key to me. But again, competing, giving your best, preparing your best, giving your best, living with the results, and then learning from the results. That's another component I would throw in as well.
What were you taught about? You mentioned mental toughness. What all those things that you mentioned are key and requirements if you're going to make it at that level, no doubt about it. But the mental toughness thing, that's something that I had very little of when I stepped on campus, and then I had to learn. And luckily, I had the good fortune of learning from one of the best to ever teach it in Nick Saban. But I'm just curious, in your mind, what were those first experiences like in terms of mental toughness, and how did you build that skill or build that muscle when you were on campus at Northwestern?
Great question, and I think there's a couple components to it. If you most people that walk on campus playing in athletics, I talk about the pyramid, right? We started the base of it is in high school. There's hundreds of thousands of, and I'm just going to speak to basketball athletes competing at the high school level, but you're the best. So now all of a sudden you're going up that pyramid. I can guarantee you, you look at the bios and the backgrounds of every guy that shows up on even the team at the bottom of the standings in a Division 1 program. They're all conference, all state, all something. So they're all very good. And you can look at probably the corresponding records, cumulative career records in high school. They've all won state titles, regional titles, league titles. Probably 75% or above, more like 85 or 90% of the games they played in, they won. So you're playing against the very best. So I walked into a situation where I think I lost 12 games across 4 years in my basketball career. I got to compete at the varsity level as a freshman. We lost 12 games. I think we won 90 something. Within 3 months of my first year, or coming to the end of that first season, I had already lost more games than I had lost in my entire career. And I was scoring at a dramatically less clip than I was as the star in my high school team, even as a freshman in high school. So that is a shock to the system. And you may go in knowing that, hey, you won't have the same levels of accomplishment, but you still go in thinking, I'm going to win and we're going to do great things. That's just human nature. And you should think that way as an athlete. But when it doesn't happen, it's a shock to the system. So processing defeat, processing your role changing, processing that, hey, I may not be the best guy in the court, it takes some toughness, and it also takes perspective. And I think everything I just suggested is important to remember when you walk in there. You're competing with the best. This won't be easy, but at the same time, trust yourself, believe in yourself, stay the course. So that's kind of changing that mindset and just going in with that perspective, and always having a learning mindset. I lost today, but what can I take away from the loss? And what's important is I prepare the best I can, give my best, read the scouting report, be a good teammate, play as hard as I can, and then live with the results to a certain extent. Live with it that I did it the best I could. No, I don't like losing, but now learn what can I do better as we move forward, both individually and collectively. And then maybe one last statement, Bill, don't go it alone. And which is these are young adults, young men and women playing this game. And again, all the factors we talked about. You have the world watching you. Now with social media, you have some folks saying some maybe not so nice things about you individually or as a team collectively. Although they don't mean it, the talking heads on sports shows also will make some comments that intentionally weren't meant to be a shot at you, but they may say something about your team's performance or the quality of your team. That's a lot to take in as a young adult. Oh, by the way, you have to be a student, you have to be in class on time, you have to hit academic standards. And then the elevation of how tough it is to train and participate. That's a lot coming at you, and it can wear on you not only physically, but emotionally and mentally. So it's really important that you have a strong supporting cast with you. It starts with that team, it starts with that coaching staff, it starts with your teammates. But there's other folks there for you, mentalist coaches and others, and then obviously your family and friends. Lean on them. Don't try to take all of this in alone. And we've seen all too many cases where young folks, and even some who were winning at high levels, were struggling emotionally, and we just didn't know about it. And we've had some tragic results. So it's important to don't take it all in by yourself and lean on those who care about you and the support systems you have to help you through this process.
So you want to play Division I college sports. If you're listening, there's your reality check right there. It's so well said, Don. There's so much coming at you. But I think as hard as that is at times, and I'm sure you struggled with it at times like I did, what a great teacher. What a great teacher for later in life, because that really does become your reality, especially as the world and society continues to speed up the pace at which it operates. So it was just a great proving ground and a great training ground for me, as I know it is for you and so many thousands of athletes across the country. And I want to transition to this transition, no pun intended, but I want to talk about the transition out of athletics when that came to an end and really the real reality set in. I know I struggled with that transition and no longer being able to define myself as an athlete. And I don't imagine that you struggled with it quite as much because of your family background and the teachings from your dad and the corporate environment that you observed as a kid. But talk to me about what that was like when your athletic career came to an end, when you played your last game. Did you struggle with that at all? And what were your initial thoughts as you moved into that new part of your life?
Here's what I'd say. I think every athlete struggles with it to a certain extent, Bill, some more than others. And I would say part of it is due to the level of accomplishment in some regards, the opportunity to continue to play professionally, and maybe some individual achievements and accomplishments. I would suggest that folks who have done all those things, probably it's a little bit harder. At a baseline, I think we all do because we're all competitors. We put so much into it from the time we are young children all the way through to being young adults in our early 20s. It is your primary objective. It's part of your daily routine. It's your passion, right? Your drive, it's your purpose. So when you do have to let that go, regardless of whether you're on the first place team that's competing for conference or national titles or a team that didn't do so well, it's still a challenge as to, gosh, what do I do next? I feel like a part of me is gone. I would say in my case, because first of all, I made a conscious decision to go to a school that was not at the upper echelon of the Big Ten athletically, frankly, and most of the power sports, let alone basketball. So I went in knowing that I'm going after this equation with going to Northwestern with already thinking about what's next once I finished playing my last game as a senior. I really wasn't going in thinking, hey, I've got a shot to play in the NBA. Perhaps play overseas, but that didn't come to fruition. And probably halfway through my sophomore year, it was pretty clear to me that, yeah, you really do need to get ready because your last game most likely will be after the end of your senior year. So I had that pre-wiring and then that realization early versus maybe some athletes don't think about it until literally they played their last game in their senior year. So I was pre-wired, and as such, it was a fairly smooth transition. But even within that, I had those moments after that senior day, my last game, that wow, it just felt weird. Even as I stepped into my first job out of undergrad, it didn't feel right. I wasn't as passionate and energized the way I was as an athlete. And we'll talk about how I got there eventually. So that would be one statement I would make. I think every athlete struggles with it, but I think what's important is a lot of athletes feel when you stop playing that that part of them is dead, and the things that were so part of their characteristics, their DNA as athletes, that gets put on the shelf forever. I would suggest absolutely not for the things you said before, which is what you went through to prepare as an athlete, the consistency of training, the dedication, the perseverance, the teamwork, the leadership, the collaboration, all of that transitions and translates so well to the business world, to entertainment, to academia, to whatever those professions are off a playing field or a court. And it's just around understanding that and marrying it up with something you're passionate about, and then parlaying and translating that into a specific way that can be brought to light in that new career. And that's one of the misnomers I see a lot. A lot of athletes think that I can't bring that personality to the table with me beyond the playing field. And I'd say, no, that's the starting point for what you do next.
You bring up a good point. When you started that next chapter, your athletic career came to an end. You started in the corporate world. What were your immediate impressions in terms of how you mentioned some of the similarities and some of the traits that you can use, but how were those two environments alike? And then did you see any differences at the same time? Compare those two worlds for me, if you would.
Sure. The energy that you get and the rush you get on a playing field in front of thousands of people, obviously, that's just not going to be the case unless you're a music entertainer,
Yeah, a
right?
rock
Playing in
star,
big,
yeah.
a rock star in big venues. But that's one of the things you just have to understand, that adrenaline that you get from the thrill of competition and the uncertainty, at least in that moment, and how it all comes to a head in front of thousands of people and then millions of people watching on TV, that's just not going to be there. But the similarities are, you're working in a corporation or a university or a nonprofit environment. In most cases, whether it's a small business or a large one, there's other people involved, right? You've got to work together. You've got to find ways to bring out the best in each other and work in a collaborative environment to achieve a common objective. And oh, by the way, you're usually competing, certainly in a corporate environment, against someone else who does the same thing, and they're after the same customer that you are. So there is that thrill of competition. It's just a little bit different, but we want to win. How do we find a way to win? Be a little bit better than the competition so that we can win a share of the market. So teamwork, collaboration is so important. And then leadership, right? I've worked in great organizations with so many talented people, and that may not have had the right culture and the right leadership to get everyone on the same page, moving in the same direction towards a common goal. And they failed. So leadership is so essential. And there's different levels of leadership in an organization. When I finally had the chance to lead my own team, I'm a marketing person, so leading a product marketing team, it became very apparent that I had people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different regions, and in a couple cases, different countries and therefore cultures. So, how do we create a unified culture where we respect each other's values, each other's differences, and highlight those differences and put people in positions to let their strengths come to the forefront, and then we're better together as a result. Where do I go to pull out the best of my leadership skills? Was being a college basketball player, and the opportunity my senior year to be one of the co-captains of the team. And how do we lead? Because in that environment, we had guys from the country, we had guys from the city, we had most of our guys were from the Midwest, and we had guys from the West Coast, a guy from Utah, a guy from California. Here I am from Connecticut. Celebrate each other's differences. We visit each other's homes. We ended up playing a game in one of the regions. We got to go over to their old high school and see it, and we celebrated each other and then came together on common goals. So I think leadership is an incredible intrinsic value that I personally believe most athletes have, that is such an advantage. And again, leading through adverse times in a game or during a season where it's not going well or during a losing streak. So managing and leading through adversity is something that athletes very much have I think, an upper hand on so many folks when it comes to that in the corporate world.
That's so well said and so well put. And I love that you mentioned leadership, and you mentioned a lot there. But if there's one quality or one trait that a leader needs to have, especially when you are putting together people from all these different backgrounds, because I played on a team in college where you're right, guys were from all over the country, from all different sorts of backgrounds, and we got to get everybody on the same page. At least the leaders of the team do, but of course the coaching staff. So in a corporate environment, you're not playing in front of thousands of people. You're not screaming and yelling. It's not so much a locker room culture, so to speak. But how do you have that same impact and maybe what's one or two things that you can do immediately or easily to start that process?
To me, in a corporate environment, it starts with vision, right? You have a vision, and you need to be clear and consistent on what that vision is, and then communication of it, right? Communication is key. So I'd say vision, clarity of the vision and the mission, and then communication of that, and consistency and articulating and reinforcing that message to your people.
You've worked at some of the biggest companies in the country, Disney, Abbott, Warner Brothers, and on. You've got such a great leadership experience background. I'm just curious in that type of high pressure environment, because you played in high pressure environments in college, but in that type of similar but different environment, how do you instill mental toughness in your teams when things don't go according to plan? And those people may haven't had that very black and white, very tough love sort of education on mental toughness that comes from being a high level college athlete. How do you teach that to somebody else who maybe doesn't have that skill yet?
That's a great question. I think it's a couple things. I go back to early in the conversation, we talked about the importance of preparation. And I'm a big believer in the preparation is so key because it instills confidence. So the discipline of we're prepared and as an athlete, the repetition, I put in the reps. I've shot 500 shots a day for 300 days out of the year. And the only reason it wasn't 365 is we were playing in games or traveling to the destinations during the season. So there's a comfort and a confidence, quiet confidence that comes with preparation. And you trust your training, trust your judgment, trust your skill set, trust your ability. So when adversity hits, we don't panic, right? We go back to our training, we tweak our fundamentals, make sure that our fundamentals are straight, my feet are set, I'm in balance. I've done this. I put in the work. I'm like a machine. I've been in the gym late at night. So just don't panic. It's a full game. Games aren't won in the first minute, they're won late. So trust your training. And as a leader, how do you do that? It's instilling confidence in people not to panic. So if you panic, they're going to panic. Don't let your teammates, the team you lead, see you sweat. Acknowledge that we're facing adverse times, but trust our preparation, trust our training, trust the strategy we have in place. Let's follow it all the way out. Sure, you have to make a tweak here or there, but I believe in you. I believe in us collectively. I believe in the vision and the mission and the plan. Make whatever necessary adjustments are. It's like a coach making halftime adjustments, but the bottom line is we're going to play the way we play with these minor adjustments, and then let's go out and win the game in the end. That's the way I approach it. And I think, again, the key is getting people to see that you believe in them and you trust them, you've empowered them, and just stay calm in the moment and let's go execute.
Another great soundbite. I love it. It reminds me of the quote, and I don't know who said it. I think it might be coincidentally from the ancient Greek Spartans. I might have that wrong, but I think it goes something like the more we sweat in training, the less we bleed in battle. And I
Yeah,
love that you brought up preparation because it's so important. And the repetition of that preparation as well, I think, is really crucial. So, Don, if you would give me a couple of Don's personal practices, daily habits that you use to call on or lean on resilience or to use for mental toughness when things get a little dicey for you, whether it's personally at home, maybe it's in the corporate environment. Give us some tangible takeaways that we can use immediately to help ourselves get a small win.
sure. One of them builds off of what we just talked about. And I do this with my son, my youngest, who just completed his senior year of basketball and graduates in 3 weeks and works super hard. I'm proud of the way he prepares. He's in the gym, he's skipping proms and homecoming dances, and he'd rather be in the gym shooting late at night. So I tell him, trust your training, and there's a quiet confidence that comes from that training. But like any athlete, you go into a game and you want the game to go perfectly. You want to shoot 50% or better from three and not turn the ball over, and you want to win by double digits. But you're going to have nights where whatever's happening happens. The shots are not falling. You get a couple of quick fouls. The other team takes you out of the game with a box and one. Your team collectively just is off, and you're playing ugly. But I always talk to him about let's win anyway. Let's just win. Because at the end of the day, they won't remember if you won by 25. They won't remember if you didn't shoot well from three, unless you have one of those 60-point nights. But they will remember the score, who won the game. So win anyway, overcome the obstacles, perseverance, find a way. So it's win anyway or win by one. Those are some things that I talk to him about. And I always tell myself the same thing. You have a plan going into the day, and then fire drills happen at work, or fire drills happen at home that cut into your work time. Unforeseen challenges come up. Let's win the day. I just want to win the day. And that can take on different forms, but it's really about we're going to overcome whatever obstacles pop up. So that's really a takeaway. I could hopefully that adds some value to your listeners.
It absolutely does. And one of the most underrated parts of being a high level college athlete, I think, is that not that you got to learn all those lessons and use them in your own life, but you got to pay it forward and pass it along to your children, anybody else that you come into contact with and have a chance to impact. And I know that you've just impacted all of our listeners. So, Don Polite, thanks so much for being here. Please, before you go, tell the audience how they can connect with you and follow your continued success.
I appreciate that, Bill. Again, it's been a blast to get to know you and to be on your podcast. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Would love to connect. Please send me a connection request. And the other thing is, Bill, at this point in my career, it's a servant lifestyle. I want to pay it forward. I want to help as many people as I can professionally and personally where possible. So please do send me a LinkedIn request, and I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome, Don. Here's to your continued success, and let's stay in touch and keep doing great things. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Bill.